The bullet whizzed past Abigail Nielsen's ear, shattering the glass behind her as she ducked beneath the saloon table. Arizona Territory, 1885, was no place for a woman alone, but she had little choice after her father's stagecoach was ambushed 3 days prior. Blood stained the hem of her once pristine traveling dress as she crawled toward the back exit, the sounds of the brawl fading behind her. "Run while you can, Miss Nielsen," the barkeep shouted after her. "They'll be coming for that land deed soon enough." Outside in the cool desert night, Abigail gathered her skirts and ran. Her reticule clutched to her chest, containing the only thing of value she had left the deed to her father's silver mine. The moon cast long shadows across the dusty street as she fled Tucson, heading into the vast emptiness of the desert with nothing but the clothes on her back and a desperate plan to reach her uncle in Colorado. By dawn, her throat burned with thirst, and her legs trembled with each step. The merciless sun had barely begun its ascent when she spotted a thin curl of smoke rising above a distant ridge. Salvation or danger, she had no way to know. But with no water and the temperature rising, she had little choice but to investigate. She approached cautiously, her footsteps silent on the sandy earth. At the crest of a small hill, she peered down to see a small camp nestled in a natural hollow. A man tended a cook fire, his broad shoulders turned to her, a worn leather hat shading his face from view. A magnificent Palomino horse grazed nearby, and supplies were neatly arranged around a bedroll. The smell of coffee made her stomach clench with hunger. Abigail hesitated, weighing her options. Before she could decide, a loose stone skittered down the hillside. The man whirled, his hand dropping to the Colt revolver at his hip with practiced ease. "Show yourself," he called, his voice deep and steady. "I ain't in the habit of shooting folks, but I will if you're fixing to cause trouble." With trembling legs, Abigail rose to her full height, hands raised in surrender. "Please, sir, I mean no harm. I'm lost." The man's stance relaxed slightly, though his hand remained near his weapon. "Come down slow," he instructed. "Keep your hands where I can see them." As she descended the slope, Abigail felt the last of her strength ebbing away. 3 days of fear, grief, and exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. Her vision tunneled, darkening at the edges, and she felt herself falling. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground. Through the haze, she heard the man's concerned voice. "Easy now, madam. I've got you." When Abigail opened her eyes again, she was lying on a bedroll beside the fire, a canteen of water near her hand, and the scent of beans cooking in a cast-iron pot. The man sat across from her, watching with careful eyes. "You've been out for about an hour," he said, tipping his hat back to reveal a weathered face with kind eyes. "Name's Samuel Nolan. Most folks call me Sam." "Abigail Nielsen," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Nolan. Just Sam is fine." He poured coffee into a tin cup and passed it to her. "What brings a lady like yourself out here alone? These parts ain't exactly hospitable to solitary travelers." Abigail's hands trembled as she accepted the cup. Should she trust this stranger with her story? What choice did she have? "My father and I were traveling to Colorado," she began, the words catching in her throat. "Our stagecoach was attacked 3 days ago. Everyone else they didn't survive. I managed to hide until the bandits left." Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them away. They were after this. She withdrew the folded deed from her reticule. "My father's silver mine. It's all I have left of him now." Sam's expression darkened. "These bandits, did you get a look at them?" One had a scar across his cheek. Another wore a red bandana. Their leader? She swallowed hard. He had a silver belt buckle shaped like a snake. Sam's jaw tightened. "The Reynolds gang. They've been terrorizing these territories for months." He stirred the beans thoughtfully. "Where in Colorado are you headed?" "Silverton. My uncle has a ranch there." "That's a long way, Miss Nielsen." "Too far for a woman alone." Abigail stiffened. "I have no choice, Mr. Nolan. I won't sell my father's legacy to those murderers." A hint of a smile touched Sam's lips. "I wasn't suggesting you should. I'm headed north myself. Delivering this horse to a ranch outside Durango. That's not far from Silverton." He hesitated. "If you're amenable, you could travel with me. Safety in numbers and all that." Relief washed over her. followed quickly by suspicion. "Why would you help me? You don't know me." "Let's just say I've got my own reasons for steering clear of the Reynolds gang." He didn't elaborate further. "Eat something, then rest. We'll head out at first light." That night, Abigail slept fitfully, plagued by nightmares of the stagecoach attack. She woke with a start just before dawn to find Sam already up, packing their meager camp. "You talk in your sleep," he said, without looking at her. "Sounds like you've been through hell." Abigail wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the desert heat. "Yes," she replied simply. They traveled north throughout the day, Sam on his horse and Abigail riding behind him, her arms tentatively wrapped around his waist. He spoke little, but his silence wasn't uncomfortable. There was something reassuring about his solid presence, the confident way he navigated the rugged terrain. As dusk approached, they made camp near a small stream. Sam taught her how to build a fire properly and set snares for rabbits. His hands were calloused but gentle as he demonstrated the knots. "Where did you learn all this?" she asked as they ate the rabbit he'd caught and prepared. "My pa was a trapper," he replied. "Taught me everything about surviving in the wild before he passed. Been on my own since I was 16. You must get lonely." Sam stared into the fire. "You get used to it." "I don't think I could," Abigail admitted. "Even in Tucson, where I knew no one, I found the silence oppressive." "Silence has its virtues," Sam said. "Lets a man think. What do you think about out here alone?" He glanced at her, something unreadable in his eyes. "The past, mostly. Mistakes I've made, people I've lost." Abigail sensed there was more to his story, but she didn't press. Everyone had their secrets, their burdens to bear. On the third day of their journey, disaster struck. They were crossing a shallow river when Sam's horse stepped into a hidden hole and stumbled, throwing them both into the rushing water. Abigail hit her head on a rock, and the world went dark. When she came to, she was lying on the riverbank, coughing up water. Sam knelt beside her, his face etched with concern. "Thank God," he breathed when she opened her eyes. "You scared me half to death." Abigail tried to sit up, wincing at the pain in her head. "The horse?" "Spooked and ran. I'll track him down later." Sam helped her to a sitting position. "Your head's bleeding. Let me take a look." His touch was surprisingly gentle as he examined the gash on her temple. "It's not too deep, but we should clean it." He tore a strip from his own shirt and soaked it in the river. "This might sting a bit," Abigail hissed as he dabbed at the wound. "I'm sorry for being such a burden." Sam's eyes met hers. "You're not a burden, Miss Nielsen." "Abigail," she corrected. "After all this, I think you've earned the right to use my given name." A small smile touched his lips. "Abigail, then." With the horse gone, they were forced to continue on foot. Sam fashioned a crude walking stick for Abigail from a branch and carried most of their supplies himself. They made slow progress, and by nightfall, they had covered less than half the distance they would have on horseback. "We should reach the next town in 2 days," Sam said as they made camp that night. "We can hire horses there." Abigail nodded, wincing at the pain in her head. The day's journey had taken its toll, and she felt weak and feverish. She huddled close to the fire, shivering despite the warmth. Sam noticed immediately. "You're sick," he said, pressing a hand to her forehead. "You're burning up." "I'm fine," she insisted, but her chattering teeth betrayed her. Without a word, Sam unrolled his bedroll next to hers and sat down beside her. "Body heat," he explained when she looked at him questioningly. "Best way to ward off the chill." Too exhausted to argue, Abigail leaned against him. His arm came around her shoulders, solid and reassuring. For the first time since her father's death, she felt safe. "Tell me about your father," Sam said softly. Abigail closed her eyes, letting memories wash over her. "He was a dreamer, always chasing the next big strike. My mother died when I was young, so it was just the two of us, traveling from one mining town to another." She smiled faintly. "He wasn't always practical, but he was kind. He taught me to read the stars, to appreciate the beauty in wild places." "Sounds like a good man." "He was." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "He didn't deserve to die like that." Sam's arm tightened around her. "No one does." She turned to look at him, noticing for the first time the scar that ran along his jawline, nearly hidden by his beard. "What about your family?" A shadow crossed his face. "Lost them in a fire when I was 21, my wife and son." Abigail's heart ached for him. "I'm so sorry. It was a long time ago." But the pain in his eyes suggested otherwise. "Is that why you prefer the solitude, the open country?" He nodded slowly. "Easier to be alone than to risk losing someone again." They sat in silence for a long moment, the fire crackling between them. Then softly Abigail said, "Perhaps we're both running from something." Sam didn't reply, but his hand found hers in the darkness, their fingers intertwining. By morning, Abigail's fever had broken, but she was still weak. Sam insisted on staying put for another day to let her recover. He spent the morning hunting and returned with a pair of quail, which he roasted over the fire. "You're quite skilled at surviving out here," Abigail observed as they ate. "Necessity's a fine teacher," he replied. "After Eliza and Thomas died, I couldn't bear to stay in our hometown. Too many memories. So I headed west, learned to live off the land." He offered her more water. "What will you do once you reach your uncle's?" Abigail considered the question. "I'm not entirely sure. I've never met him. He and my father had a falling out years ago. But he's the only family I have left." She fingered the deed in her pocket. "And I have the mine. Perhaps I could hire workers, try to make it profitable." Sam looked skeptical. "Mining's a rough business, especially for a woman alone." "I'm stronger than I look," she said defensively. "I don't doubt that." His expression softened. "You've survived things that would break most folks." The next day they continued their journey. Abigail was still weak, but she pushed herself to keep pace with Sam. By midday, dark clouds had gathered on the horizon. "Storm's coming," Sam observed, glancing at the sky. "We need to find shelter." They quickened their pace, but the storm moved faster. Within an hour, fat raindrops began to fall, and thunder rumbled in the distance. Sam scanned the landscape, his expression tense. "There," he said, pointing to a rocky outcropping ahead. "Might be a cave or an overhang we can use." They reached the rocks just as the heavens opened, rain pouring down in sheets. Sam found a small cave, barely large enough for the two of them, and they huddled inside as lightning split the sky. "At least we won't get struck by lightning in here," Abigail said, trying to lighten the mood. Sam smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He seemed distracted, constantly glancing at the storm outside. When a particularly loud thunderclap shook the cave, he flinched. "Are you afraid of storms?" Abigail asked gently. He hesitated before answering. "The fire that killed my family. It started during a storm like this. Lightning struck our barn." His voice was hollow. "I was in town when it happened. By the time I got back..." He trailed off. Without thinking, Abigail reached for his hand. "It wasn't your fault. I should have been there. You couldn't have known." Sam turned to face her, his eyes filled with a grief so raw it took her breath away. "I've told myself that 1,000 times. Doesn't make it any easier to believe." On impulse, Abigail leaned forward and pressed her lips to his cheek. "Thank you for saving my life," she whispered. "For being here when I needed someone." Something shifted in Sam's expression. He reached up, his fingers brushing her cheek with a tenderness that made her heart race. For a moment, she thought he might kiss her properly. Instead, he pulled away, creating distance between them. "We should get some rest," he said, his voice gruff. "Storm might last all night." Confused and slightly hurt by his withdrawal, Abigail wrapped her arms around herself and settled against the cave wall. As the rain continued to fall outside, she wondered if she had imagined the connection between them. The storm passed by morning, leaving the desert air clean and crisp. They continued their journey in silence, an awkwardness hanging between them that hadn't been there before. By midday, they spotted a column of smoke in the distance. "The town of Copper Springs," Sam explained. "We can rest there, maybe find horses." Abigail felt a strange reluctance as they approached civilization. The past week with Sam had created a bubble around them, a world apart from the dangers and complications of real life. Once they reached town, that bubble would burst. Copper Springs was little more than a cluster of wooden buildings around a dusty main street. Sam led her to the general store, where he purchased supplies while Abigail waited outside, suddenly conscious of her dirty, torn dress and tangled hair. "The storekeeper says there's a boarding house down the street," Sam said as he emerged. "You can get a proper bath and a clean bed for the night. I've arranged for horses will leave in the morning." "Where will you stay?" Abigail asked, trying to keep the concern from her voice. "There's a livery stable with a hayloft. I'll be fine there." "You could," she began, then stopped herself. What was she thinking? That he would share her room at the boarding house? She felt her cheeks flush. "Thank you for the arrangements." The boarding house was run by a plump widow named Mrs. Fletcher, who clucked sympathetically at Abigail's appearance and immediately prepared a hot bath. The sensation of clean water against her skin was heavenly, and for the first time in days, Abigail allowed herself to truly relax. After her bath, Mrs. Fletcher provided a simple but clean dress that had belonged to her daughter. "It might be a bit large on you, dear, but it's better than those rags." "You're very kind," Abigail said gratefully. "Is there somewhere in town I could send a telegram?" "I should let my uncle know I'm coming. The Mercantile has a telegraph office. Your husband can escort you there." Abigail blushed. "Mr. Nolan isn't my husband. He's a friend who's helping me reach my uncle's ranch." Mrs. Fletcher raised an eyebrow, but didn't comment further. "Dinner's at 6. I've set a place for your friend as well." After resting for an hour, Abigail ventured out to find Sam. She located him at the livery, brushing down a sturdy-looking bay horse. He looked up as she approached, his eyes widening slightly at her transformation. "You look better," he said awkwardly. "Clean, at least," she replied with a small smile. "Mrs. Fletcher has invited you to join us for dinner." "That's kind of her, but I don't think—" "Please," Abigail interrupted. "I'd like you to come." Something in her tone must have convinced him, because after a moment, he nodded. "I'll be there." They walked to the telegraph office together, where Abigail sent a brief message to her uncle, explaining what had happened and her expected arrival time. As they left the Mercantile, a commotion down the street caught their attention. A group of riders was entering town, their horses kicking up dust as they approached the saloon. Sam tensed beside her, his hand moving instinctively to his gun. "What is it?" Abigail asked, sensing his unease. "Trouble," he murmured. "Those men I recognize, the one with the silver belt buckle." Abigail's blood ran cold. The Reynolds gang, here in this tiny town. Had they tracked her somehow? "We need to leave," Sam said urgently, taking her arm. "Now, before they see us." But it was too late. As they turned to go, one of the men glanced in their direction. His eyes narrowed, and he nudged his companion, pointing toward them. "Run," Sam ordered, pushing Abigail ahead of him. "Back to the boarding house. Lock yourself in your room." "What about you?" "I'll draw them off. Go." Heart pounding, Abigail ran, her borrowed skirts clutched in her hands. Behind her, she heard shouts and the sound of running footsteps. She didn't look back until she reached the boarding house, slamming the door behind her. Mrs. Fletcher appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "Goodness, child, what's the matter?" "Men," Abigail gasped. "Dangerous men. They killed my father. They're after me." The older woman's expression hardened. "Upstairs with you, then. I'll handle this." Abigail hesitated. "My friend, if he's worth his salt, he'll find his way back to you. Now go." Reluctantly, Abigail hurried upstairs to her room, locking the door as instructed. Through the window, she could see the main street, but there was no sign of Sam or the Reynolds gang. Fear knotted her stomach. Had they caught him? Was he hurt? Or worse? Hours passed with no word. Abigail paced her small room, jumping at every sound from below. When a soft knock finally came at her door, she froze. "Abigail!" It was Sam's voice, low and urgent. "It's me." She unlocked the door with trembling hands. Sam slipped inside, shutting it quickly behind him. There was a bruise forming on his cheekbone, and his knuckles were raw, but he was otherwise unharmed. "What happened?" she demanded. "I was so worried." "Had a bit of a scuffle," he admitted. "Lost them in the alleys behind the saloon." He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "We can't stay here. They know we're in town, and they won't stop looking. But the horses, already taken care of. Mrs. Fletcher's son is bringing them around back. We'll leave after dark." Abigail sank onto the bed, suddenly exhausted. Will we ever be safe from them? Sam knelt before her, taking her hands in his. I promise you, Abigail, I won't let them hurt you. There was such conviction in his voice that she believed him. Why are you doing all this for me? She whispered. You could have left me in the desert. You could leave now. His eyes met hers, filled with an emotion she couldn't quite name. Maybe I'm tired of running from connections, of being alone. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. Maybe I've found something worth protecting. The air between them seemed to thicken. Abigail leaned forward slightly, drawn to him like a moth to flame. This time, Sam didn't pull away. His lips met hers in a kiss so gentle it brought tears to her eyes. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. We should go, he murmured, though he made no move to stand. Yes, she agreed, equally reluctant. They left Copper Springs under cover of darkness, riding hard through the night. Sam led them off the main trail, taking winding paths through rocky terrain that would be difficult to follow. By dawn, they were deep in the wilderness, far from any settlement. We'll rest here for a few hours, Sam said, dismounting in a small clearing. Then push on north. If we're lucky, we can reach Durango in 3 days. Abigail slid from her horse, wincing at the soreness in her legs. Do you think they'll follow us this far? The Reynolds gang is persistent, especially when there's money involved. Sam began unsaddling the horses. But they're not fools. The farther we get from their usual territory, the less likely they are to pursue us. They made a cold camp, not risking a fire that might be spotted. As they shared jerky and hardtack, Abigail studied Sam's profile in the growing light. Tell me about your son, she said softly. What was he like? Surprise flickered across Sam's face, followed by a shadow of old pain. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, quietly, he said, Thomas was 4 when he died, had his mother's eyes and my stubborn streak. A faint smile touched his lips. He loved horses, could sit a pony before he could walk properly. He was going to be a fine horseman someday. Abigail's heart ached for him. And your wife. Eliza was everything. Smart, kind, stronger than she looked. His voice roughened. We grew up together in Kansas, married young. I was going to build her a big house on our farm, give her all the things she deserved. He shook his head. Never got the chance. On impulse, Abigail reached for his hand. They would be proud of the man you've become. Sam's fingers tightened around hers. I'm not so sure about that. I've done things since then, made choices I'm not proud of. We all have regrets, she said. But you're a good man, Sam Nolan. You saved my life. You're risking your own to help me now. He looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. You make me want to be better, he admitted. To stop running. To believe I might deserve. He trailed off, but his meaning was clear. Abigail leaned forward and kissed him, pouring all her newfound feelings into the gesture. When they parted, she whispered, You deserve happiness, Sam. We both do. They allowed themselves only a few hours of rest before continuing northward. The terrain grew more mountainous as they left the desert behind, the air cooler and rich with the scent of pine. They traveled through the day, stopping only to rest the horses and eat a quick meal. As dusk approached on the 2nd day of their journey from Copper Springs, they made camp in a sheltered grove beside a small stream. The tension of their flight had eased somewhat, and they risked a small fire to ward off the mountain chill. After dinner, they sat side by side, watching the flames dance. Sam's arm was around Abigail's shoulders, her head resting against him. The intimacy felt natural now, as if they had known each other for years rather than days. What will you do after you deliver the horse to Durango? Abigail asked. Sam was quiet for a moment. I hadn't thought that far ahead. You could come with me to Silverton, she suggested, trying to keep her voice casual. Help me get settled at my uncle's. He turned to look at her, his expression unreadable in the firelight. And then, Abigail gathered her courage. And then, maybe you could stay. Help me with the mine. She paused, heart pounding. Be with me. Sam's hand came up to cup her cheek. Are you sure that's what you want? A drifter with nothing to his name but a saddle and a troubled past? I want you, she said simply. The rest doesn't matter. He kissed her then, with a passion that took her breath away. When they finally parted, both breathing heavily, he pressed his forehead to hers. "I've been alone for so long," he murmured. "I'd almost forgotten what it feels like to care about someone, to have someone care about me." "You're not alone anymore," Abigail promised. That night, they shared Sam's bedroll, finding comfort and joy in each other's arms beneath the vast canopy of stars. For the first time since her father's death, Abigail slept deeply, without nightmares. The sound of approaching horses woke them at dawn. Sam was on his feet instantly, gun in hand, pushing Abigail behind him as 5 riders emerged from the trees. "Well, well," drawled the man with the silver snake belt buckle. "Thought you could outrun us, did you?" "Reynolds," Sam acknowledged, his voice cold. "You're a long way from your usual hunting grounds." The leader grinned, revealing tobacco-stained teeth. "Silvermine deed's worth the trip. Hand over the girl and her papers, and we might let you live." "Not going to happen," Reynolds sighed dramatically. "Always got to do things the hard way, don't you, Nolan? Just like back in Tucson." Abigail glanced at Sam, confused. "You know each other?" Sam's jaw tightened. "We've crossed paths." "Oh, he didn't tell you?" Reynolds laughed. "Your protector here used to ride with us. One of the best hired guns in the territory, weren't you, Sam? Until you got soft." The revelation hit Abigail like a physical blow. She stared at Sam, who wouldn't meet her eyes. "That was a long time ago," Sam said quietly. "Not that long," Reynolds countered. "Come on, Sam, for old time's sake. Give us the girl and the deed, and we'll call it square." Sam's grip tightened on his gun. "She's under my protection." Reynolds' smile vanished. "Then you'll die with her." He raised his hand, signaling his men. What happened next was a blur of gunfire and shouting. Sam pushed Abigail toward the horses, firing as he moved. She scrambled into the saddle, heart in her throat, as bullets whizzed past. Sam mounted his own horse in one fluid motion, still firing. "Ride!" he shouted. "Don't look back!" They galloped away, the sounds of pursuit fading behind them as they entered a narrow canyon. Sam led them through a maze of passages, clearly familiar with the terrain. By midday, there was no sign of the Reynolds gang. They stopped to rest the horses beside a small spring. Abigail dismounted stiffly, her body aching from the hard ride. The silence between them was heavy with unspoken questions. Finally, she asked, "Were you ever going to tell me?" Sam sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. "I wanted to. I just didn't know how." "So it's true? You rode with them, helped them rob and kill innocent people?" "Yes," he admitted, his voice hollow. "After I lost my family, I was lost, angry at the world. I fell in with Reynolds and his crew for a time." He met her gaze directly. "I never killed anyone innocent, Abigail. That was my one line. But I did things I'm not proud of." "When did you leave them?" "About a year ago. They wanted to raid a settlement. Women and children would have been caught in the crossfire. I refused, tried to warn the settlers." His hand unconsciously touched the scar along his jawline. "Reynolds didn't take kindly to my betrayal." Abigail digested this information, her emotions in turmoil. The man she'd come to care for, to trust with her life, had a darker past than she'd imagined. And yet, he'd changed, had risked his life to save hers, repeatedly. "Is that why you were helping me? Guilt?" "At first, maybe," he acknowledged. "When I realized you were running from Reynolds, it felt like a chance to make amends somehow." His eyes softened. "But it became more than that. You became more." Abigail approached him slowly. "I need to know if you're still that man, the one who rode with killers." "No," Sam said without hesitation. "That man died a long time ago. The man I am now, the man who loves you, he's trying to be better, to make things right." "You love me?" she whispered. He reached for her hands, holding them gently in his own. "More than I thought possible. More than I deserved to." Abigail stood on tiptoe and kissed him softly. "Love isn't about deserving," she said. "It's about choosing, and I choose you, Sam Nolan, past and all." They continued their journey northward, pushing the horses as hard as they dared. The mountains grew steeper, the forests thicker. Sam remained vigilant, constantly checking their back trail for signs of pursuit. On the afternoon of the third day, they crested a ridge and saw the town of Durango spread out in the valley below. Smoke rose from chimneys, and the gleam of railroad tracks cut through the center of town. "We made it," Abigail breathed, relief washing over her. Sam's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Almost. Silverton's still a day's ride from here." They entered Durango cautiously, alert for any sign of the Reynolds gang. The town was bustling with miners, ranchers, and railroad workers, providing welcome anonymity. Sam delivered the Palomino to its new owner, a wealthy rancher who paid him handsomely for his trouble. They took rooms at a respectable hotel, enjoying the luxury of hot baths and clean beds after days on the trail. Abigail sent another telegram to her uncle, confirming their arrival the following day. That evening, they dined in the hotel restaurant, both dressed in new clothes purchased that afternoon. Abigail wore a simple blue dress that brought out the color of her eyes, while Sam looked handsome but uncomfortable in a clean shirt and vest. "You clean up nicely, Mr. Nolan," she teased, enjoying the blush that crept up his neck. "Don't get used to it," he grumbled, tugging at his collar. "I'm not cut out for town living." Abigail's smile faltered. "About tomorrow. Are you sure you want to come with me? My uncle might not be welcoming, especially once he learns about my father." Sam reached across the table, taking her hand. "I'm not letting you face this alone. Whatever comes next, we'll handle it together." Later, in the privacy of her room, Abigail stood by the window, gazing out at the twinkling lights of Durango. Sam's arm slipped around her waist from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he murmured. "The future," she replied. "It feels so uncertain." "That's the nature of it." He turned her to face him. "But some things I am certain of, such as that I love you." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "That I want to build a life with you, if you'll have me." Abigail's heart swelled. "Are you proposing, Sam Nolan?" A slow smile spread across his face. "I suppose I am, though I don't have a ring yet. Abigail Nielsen, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" She threw her arms around his neck, tears of joy spilling down her cheeks. "Yes," she whispered, 1,000 times, yes. They left for Silverton the next morning, riding side by side through the spectacular mountain scenery. The aspen trees were beginning to turn golden, creating a brilliant contrast against the deep green pines and the clear blue sky. Abigail's uncle's ranch was situated in a fertile valley just outside Silverton. As they approached the gate, Abigail felt a flutter of nervousness. Would he welcome her? Would he approve of Sam? A gruff-looking man with a silver beard was waiting on the porch as they rode up. He watched them dismount with an unreadable expression. "Uncle Henry?" Abigail asked hesitantly. The man nodded once. "Abigail, you look like your mother." His eyes shifted to Sam. "And who might this be?" "Samuel Nolan, sir," Sam said, extending his hand. "I've been escorting your niece from Tucson." Uncle Henry shook his hand with a firm grip. "I received your telegrams. Come inside. You both look like you could use a hot meal and a sit-down." Over dinner, Abigail recounted the story of her father's death and their journey north, carefully editing the details of her relationship with Sam. Uncle Henry listened silently, his weathered face giving little away. "Your father was a fool," he said when she finished, "but he didn't deserve what happened to him." He glanced at Sam. "You say these Reynolds fellows are still after you?" Sam nodded. "They want the mine deed. They're persistent, but they rarely venture this far north." "They do." "They'll regret it." Uncle Henry's tone left no doubt about his meaning. "The law around here takes a dim view of outlaws." He turned back to Abigail. "You're welcome to stay as long as you need, girl. Your father and I had our differences, but family is family." "Thank you, Uncle," Abigail said, relief washing over her. "There's something else you should know." She reached for Sam's hand. "Sam and I are engaged to be married." Uncle Henry's eyebrows shot up. "Is that so?" He studied Sam with new intensity. "You planning to make an honest living, young man? Support my niece properly?" "Yes, sir," Sam replied without hesitation. "I've saved enough to buy a small spread, or I could help Abigail develop her father's mine, if that's what she wants." The older man grunted. "We'll see." But there was a hint of approval in his eyes. That night, Abigail sat in silence by the fire with empty eyes, haunted by memories of her father and their journey. The events of the past week seemed to crash over her all at once: the grief, the fear, the unexpected love she'd found. Sam watched her from across the room, giving her the space she needed to process her emotions. When she didn't speak for nearly an hour, he approached quietly, kneeling beside her chair. "Abigail," he said softly, "are you all right?" She turned to him, tears glistening in her eyes. "I keep thinking about my father, about how quickly everything changed." Her voice trembled. "What if I lose you too?" Sam took her hands in his. "You won't. You can't promise that." "No," he agreed, "but I can promise to love you every day we have together, to build something good with you." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object. "I got this in Durango yesterday." It was a simple gold band with a tiny sapphire that matched her eyes. Abigail gasped as he slid it onto her finger. "I know it's not much." "It's perfect," she interrupted, cupping his face in her hands. "You're perfect." The cowboy waited until she spoke again, his patient silence giving her the strength she needed. "I'm ready," she said finally. "Ready to stop running, to start living." Sam smiled, the firelight illuminating the love in his eyes. "Then let's begin." 3 months later, they were married in the small church in Silverton, with Uncle Henry giving the bride away. The silver mine proved profitable under their joint management, providing the funds to purchase a small ranch adjacent to her uncle's property. As winter gave way to spring, Abigail stood on the porch of their new home, watching Sam break a young horse in the corral. Her hand rested on her stomach, where new life was just beginning to grow. The shadows of the past would always be there. Her father's violent death, Sam's years as an outlaw, but they had found their way through the darkness to each other. And in that love, they had both found redemption. When Sam looked up and saw her watching, he smiled a smile so full of joy and promise that it warmed her from the inside out. He left the corral and joined her on the porch, wrapping his arms around her. "Happy?" he asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. Abigail leaned into his embrace, thinking of how far they had come from that first encounter in the desert. "More than I ever thought possible," she replied. And as the sun set over their mountain home, painting the sky in brilliant hues of gold and crimson, she knew with absolute certainty that the fire in her eyes was no longer empty, but burning bright with hope for their future together.